Next, we're going to look at some of the basic swings of the nunchuck. So to start with, I'm going to turn my back to the camera here, and I want you to follow me along. I found, as far as learning from video, this is the absolute best version, and it's my best view, by the way. So we're going to use this one. So I'm going to start with the nunchuck in my right hand, and again, we're going to hold it high and tight. So if I ever say choke up, that's what I'm talking about, choking up close to the chain, close to the rope here, and we're going to put it right next to our hip here. So think about this as kind of a chambering action, like in standard karate form, taekwondo form. And then I want you to put the other hand on your hip here. And the reason the other hand's on the hip here is so it has a place to be, and you don't actually get it in the way or accidentally get it in the way and hit your fingers with the nunchuck. So we're going to start here, and it's also posture development as well for the form. So we're going to start by just swinging the nunchuck in a reverse manner, and we're going to start with big movements. Always start with a big movement to get the idea first, and then streamline it until you can swing it more with just your wrist. And if you'll note how close to my elbow the nunchuck is, it nearly hits the elbow. So I don't want it to be way out here. That's when we lose control of the weapon. We want it to be very close. And if I do this from the front, you can see that the nunchuck is really, it's all wrist, and it's kind of stuck right in front here. And I want to see that angle, how it's going off a little bit. I want to focus that angle being straight back, as straight as possible. If I get my angle straight when I start to do some of the swinging actions, I'll have more control over the weapon. So this is the first swing. Now obviously, since we did that, we're going to do the reverse swing. So I'm going to go back to here, and we're going to go forward. I'm going to start with a big swing first, and then we're going to gradually make that a smaller swing until it's just the wrist. And the same concept, almost hitting yourself. Almost hitting yourself. And if I do that from the side again, you'll see that the angle is very straight, kind of like a helicopter blade on its side. All right? So we go forward, we go forward, and we can reverse. Now in a moment, I'll discuss the hit points, which will allow us to transition from back to front. So that's swing number one. Now swing number two is a standard figure eight motion. Now the figure eight motion, if you think about a letter 8, it's represented by what's called infinity, right? It never ends. It's like a racetrack. If you're old enough to remember the old RC race cars, were they Hot Wheels or what? I forget the actual name of them, but it never ended, right? So this is the same concept. So let's start by holding the weapon down at the very end here, and we're going to practice this maneuver with just one arm and one stick, basically. So bring the nunchuck up to your right shoulder, and then make a large X. And it helps if you're not here. If you're sideways, it's a much more easier movement. So we're going to start from the right shoulder. We're going to make an X down toward the left hip, and then we're going to raise up and start from the left shoulder and make an X down to the right hip. And then this is where, at the end here, there's where the connection to the 8 is, right? So it's an 8 on the side. And then you go here, and then up and down, and up and down. So this is the figure 8 movement. And again, we're going to start with very big movements. And notice a little bit of hip rotation and knee rotation. That's going to aid in the smoothness of this movement. So I'm really going to be leading the movement from my hips versus the arm. Right? And then the next step will be to take the nunchuck and hold it again high this time. And we're going to start up to the top here. Notice the nunchuck is hanging behind here. And I'm going to swing it down here. And then when it comes to the bottom, I'm going to raise it up. And I'm going to start swinging back to the right. And then up and back to the left. So I'm going to keep this movement going. I'm going to start with very big movements. And as I get comfortable with this, I'm going to start to shorten the movements up a little bit and make it more with the wrist, and more with the wrist, and more with the wrist until it's strictly done with the wrist. There's really not much going on other than the wrist action, right? So start with those big movements, get your body mechanics correct, and then start to slowly transition until you're just using your wrist. And you have to practice this for a while if you've not done other weapons. But one of the nice things about this movement is you'll find it in virtually every other weapon in the martial arts. So it's a great maneuver to learn.